So far, we have been talking about hypothesis tests, and so far we have actually talked about 5 of them. The first one, or the first two rather, are about population parameters. And these are your population z-test and sample t-test. We have also talked about if we have 2 population parameters. And these are your t-tests, whether it's of independent means, or of dependent means. But they're both actually t-tests. We have also talked about if we have more than 2 population parameters. And that is usually tested using the analysis of variance or ANOVA. Now, we shall see the last hypothesis test, the fourth one, which talks about relationships. So, if a variable x is related to variable y, what is that relationship and how is that relationship significant? And to test relationships between 2 variables, we do what we call a regression analysis. There are different types of regressions, but what we will focus on would be the simple linear regression analysis. Say, for example, you want to know the hourly productivity of our employees in a certain company. So we have 5 of them, and here are their units produced in 1 hour. Now, you want to know how come employee A can only produce 55 while employee D can actually produce 70. One of the things that you looked into is their dexterity. So you had a dexterity test and found out that these are the scores of your employees. So now you would like to know, as the product manager, to compare the dexterity test scores with their hourly productivity to know whether hourly productivity is related to dexterity test scores. If these dexterity test scores can actually be a factor of hourly productivity. Now, we have to take note that in these types of relationships, we have to figure out what is the dependent variable and what is the independent variable. When we say the independent variable, as we say it's independent, this is actually what is also known sometimes as a factor, or most of the time this is usually the one that affects the other variable. So for example, if we would have our example of dexterity and units produced. Now, most of the time, if we're just going to use our common sense, it's our dexterity that affects how many units we produce. So dexterity is our independent variable. And since it's the units produced that is being affected by dexterity, then our units produced is our dependent variable. Why? So the one that affects is our independent variable, and the one that is affected is what we call our dependent variable. And these two are quite important when we do regression analysis. So, just to fix our entire table, we have now the 5 employees. Their scores on their dexterity tests as our independent variable x, and the units produced in 1 hour of the employees is our dependent variable y here. So, in the next video, we're going now to start our simple linear regression analysis.